So welcome to my channel, guys. I Today's Saturday, I'm recording this for Saturday, and I wanted to talk about this article that I found. Um, it's written back in 2021, but it has to do with a lot of things, including the Tulsa Massacre, but it also has to do with I'm going to get into this and just read the whole thing. If you're new to my channel, please like, share, subscribe. It helps me spread my message. My name is April Thomas. I'm an author. I'm a mom. I'm a business owner. And I like helping other authors. And I also like to have talking points where I talk about things that are going on. My most recent book is Forbidden, which is a romance novel between a Native American man and an African American woman, and how they come together to fight against racism. So, with all that being said, get all that out the way. Let's get into this. So, I came across this article from the New York Times, um, and I just wanted to kind of skim through and read it with you. I don't know if I'll read the whole thing because it's 18 pages, but I think I actually it's 18 pages, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It it's very, very, very interesting. Shout out to the person who wrote this, Caleb Gale. And so let's get into this. This is Leslie Benningfield Randall, a 106-year-old survivor of the Tulsa Massacre. Wow. Wow. Okay, so as dusk was falling on September 16th, 2016, callers began dialing 911 to report that a Lincoln Navigator had been abandoned on 36th Street North in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A couple of callers said the SUV had been left in the center of the road, its driver door left open, like somebody jumped out. Two officers, Betty Jo Shelby and Tyler Turnbow, were sent to the scene, and one of the Tulsa Police Department's two helicopters provided aerial surveillance as Shelby and Turnbow approached the SUV. They saw a black man standing beside the vehicle on the driver's side. Shelby and Turnbow, I can say that name for save my life, would later say that he would not comply with orders. Overhead, an officer in the helicopter said, "Time for a taser, I think." Okay, so wait. The overhead, an officer in the helicopter said, "Time for a taser, I think." Another replied, "I've got a feeling that's about to happen." Turnbow drew his taser. Shelby drew her gun. In their earpiece, they heard from above, "That looks like a bad dude, too. Could be on something." We already know how this is going to end up. More than 700 miles away in Montgomery, Alabama, a woman named Tiffany Crutcher was getting ready to meet a friend for dinner. She grew up in Tulsa and moved to Alabama to get her clinical doctorate in physical rehabilitation, after which she settled in Montgomery and opened her own practice. She had been struggling with an eerie feeling all day. Her colleagues had her colleagues had told her that she seemed off. Her colleagues had told her that she seemed off. Mm, that's that sixth sense. That is that sixth sense telling you something is wrong. Something is wrong. She was having a glass of wine when a cousin in Dallas, whom she always was always excited to hear from, called. "It's about Terrence," she said, "Tiffany's twin brother." The siblings had just celebrated their 40th birthdays a month earlier. I heard he was shot and that he's dead. Those are like the worst calls to get when a family member passes. Crutcher was stunned. I got in the car and I started driving, and my hands were shaking on the steering wheel, she told me. 2 hours later, she reached their father on the phone. He was in the hospital where Terrence was taken. They killed my son, he said, sobbing. He told her that the hospital would not let him see Terrence's body. They're treating us like criminals, he said. She asked who had killed Terrence. The police, her father said. Her brother was shot with one bullet less than 3 miles away from the part of town once known as Black Wall Street. According to the Tulsa Police Department, Terrence died at the hospital, and so I lost it. Crutcher, Crutcher, I hope I'm saying her name wrong. I hope I'm saying her name right. Crutcher told me I lost it. She had often felt the urge to protest police killings of unarmed black people in recent years. I remember when Freddie Gray got killed. I remember that. She told me I was like, let's rent a van and get down there and help. But she never in a million years would have expected to be on the other side like those families, and I just couldn't believe it. The next day, she quickly prepared for her flight home. I can't believe I'm going to be packing for a funeral, she recalls thinking, and called the person many black Tulsans have turned to after police violence, a civil rights attorney named Demario Solomon Simmons. Less than 36 hours after she touched down, Crutcher was sitting at a conference room table in Tulsa's police headquarters. She and her cousin were there to see video of the shooting that was captured by the helicopter and the squad's car dash cam. Sorry for your loss, Crutcher remembers the chief of police at the time, Chuck Jordan, who is white, saying. Crutcher asked him a question. Was my brother armed? No, ma'am. She recalls Jordan replying, he was not. But I'm going to let you know he was belligerent and he was not following commands. Crutcher's indignation swelled through three more questions. She says she asked in rapid succession, does that constitute him being shot and killed? Can you explain to me your de-escalation policy? Does your de-escalation policy constitute Terrence being killed because he was belligerent? To all three questions, Jordan replied simply, no, ma'am. So this is where he was murdered, the intersection where he was murdered. Crusher left the room before the video was played. She wasn't, what did I just say? Crusher left the room before the video was played. She announced, going to sit up here and watch my brother being murdered. Then, because it was murder, Dewey F. Bartlett Jr., then the mayor, caught up with her. He told her that he had seen the video several times and was sorry. This should have never happened, she remembers him saying. Her cousins who stayed behind to watch the video came out screaming. They killed him. The next day, at a news conference organized by Solomon Simmons, Crutcher and her family stood before the news media and called for charges to be filed against Shelby. Okay, why everybody else is pulling out a taser? Why is your dumb butt pulling out a gun? And this is, if you're too coward and too crap, I'm trying not to curse. If you're too much of a coward to not do your job correctly, then don't, that you're in the wrong field. Get out. Because she's a coward. She, whatever. Okay, I gotta get through this. A few days later, Shelby had been charged with first-degree manslaughter. Really? No, that's murder. Before her brother's death, Crutcher's life was not necessarily leading to one of social justice activism. But after his family buried Terrence, they decided they needed to fight for the justice he did not receive. We still marched, Crutcher says. We still took it to the streets. We still prayed, you know. We praised the Lord, and Reverend Al came in, she says, referring to Al Sharpton. The march on September 27, 2016 was one of the largest ever in Tulsa. For a while after Shelby's indictment, Crutcher says we were moving in the right direction because officials had released the video publicly because they were trying to be transparent because the police chief had said that justice would be achieved because the mayor-elect had said he would make it his mission to seek justice for the Crutchers. She says, I thought that we would do the right thing here in Tulsa. But Shelby was acquitted. Oh, really? Shelby was acquitted May 17th, 2017. When the judge announced that the jury's verdict What? When the judge announced the jury's verdict, I went numb, Crutcher said. The family's attorney and the assistant district attorney who prosecuted Shelby had tears in their eyes. After leaving the courtroom, her mother waited until they were in an elevator before crying out, "She killed my baby." Crutcher's father railed Oh, I'm sorry. Crutcher's father rallied them for prayer. Afterward, it was time to address the news media. I finally mustered up enough, I guess, strength to make a statement, Crutcher says. That's when I made a vow and a promise that I wouldn't rest until I transformed Tulsa's corrupt police department and until I received justice. I said it's not over. She told reporters that day, Terrence Crutcher's name is going to be the name that opens change. At another news conference that summer, Crutcher announced the creation of the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. In the words of in the words of its mission statement, the organization would change the narrative that perceived black men as bad dudes and pipeline them into a community of achievers. She had started with hopes that justice would follow her brother's killing, but it was in the dashing of those hopes that Crutcher says her journey to justice began. We in Tulsa, Oklahoma aren't going to sit by and say it is what it is, she said at one of the news conferences. The very narrative Crutcher what has committed herself to undoing, one that says black people are inherently bad people, is one that goes back 100 years in her hometown when one part of the community destroyed another part of the community, a place whose prosperity and potential belonged to but was taken from her ancestors. Crutcher's childhood revolved around the institution that anchors life for many of Tulsa's black residents. The church, her father, the Reverend Joey Hobart Lewis Crutcher, would play the organ and piano at congregations around the city and the country, but mainly at the New Heights Christian Center. Her mother, Leanna Crutcher, directed choirs and also played the piano. Crutcher recalls always being in spaces where there were white kids and black kids. She remembers they just followed together. They just flowed together. We were pretty close. I had white kids, our classmates, that would come to my house and play and spent the night, and I went to their houses. As a student in Langston University, Oklahoma's lone historical black college, in the 1990s, Crutcher met other black students from all over the country. Oh wow, Black Wall Street, they often said when they heard she was from Tulsa. They knew the name of the part of the town where black people began settling in the early 20th century. what became variously known as the Black or Negro Wall Street, terms given to several prosperous black communities across America, as well as Greenwood, Black Tulsa, and Little Africa. Oh, I didn't know that. Black Tulsa and Little Africa. Okay. Some students also mentioned that Tulsa Race Riot. Kutcher had never heard of any such riot. Wow. It was not something that had been discussed at home, but after hearing, I lost my place. But after hearing constant references from schoolmates who had often never been to Tulsa, she finally pressed her father for answers during breaks from school. In 1921, he told her reluctantly, after prolonged prodding, that the neighborhood that stood where Tiffany grew up, a thriving black community, had been destroyed by a mob of white Tulsans. He told Tiffany that the buildings had been leveled and people killed or forced to flee, and the destruction in lives and property was more than just history, it was personal. His own grandmother, her great grandmother, Rebecca Brown Crutcher, had to run away out of fear for her life. Crutcher was filled with regret when she heard this. I didn't get a chance to ask her questions, she says, because she was so young when mommy Brown passed away. Her father told her that he didn't know about what had happened to Black Tulsa until he was not much older than she was then. When he returned from the Vietnam War, Crutcher learned that her father's own discovery of the family's history also came with a warning, a deep fear that it would happen again. For Black Tulsans, consciously recalling the pain came with risk. The white rioters, Crutcher told me, scared them so bad and told them that if they ever talked about it again, that they would either be lynched or that it would happen again. Silence felt necessary for survival. We just suppressed it, Critcher says of the collective response. It was like internalized grief. So that's Tiffany, and she's sitting in front of the Black Wall Street Memorial in Tulsa. Like Critcher, I grew up black and a Tulsan, totally unaware of the massacre. Last fall, on a visit home, I barely recognized the rapid development that had transformed parts of the city in recent years. Tulsan to Tulsan, she told me, to walk right across the tracks from where Black Wall Street once prospered and take note of the Art District, one of the crown jewels in Tulsa's attempt to revitalize its downtown. There are restaurants, there are rooftops, there are scooters, there's everything. Christian made a point contrast to what was still in the black side of town. All you have to do is open your eyes. We live in a food desert. Did I say dessert or desert? We don't own anything here. So yeah, I write books for a living, so I don't read, okay? This is not my thing. We don't own everything here. Gentrification is rampant. Our educational resources are sparse. There's police brutality. There's no justice. Today, Black Tulsans live 6 fewer years on average than those in Tulsa County overall. Black Tulsans are more than twice as likely as their white counterparts to be unemployed. My ultimate goal is not to stay in the middle of a fight, Crutcher told me. Instead, she wants to bridge the divide between white and black people. But she says we can't get to that place without doing the work, without acknowledging, without doing right by people, without reparations, without restitution, without respect, without repair. We can't get to that place. Crutcher is on the board of Justice for Greenwood Foundation, which seeks to compensate survivors and descendants of victims and survivors. Last September, Solomon Simmons, who led the foundation, filed suit against the city of Tulsa, the Tulsa Regional Chamber, the Tulsa Development Authority, the Tulsa Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, the Tulsa County Sheriff, the Tulsa County Board of Commissions, and the Oklahoma Military Department. The plaintiffs, among them a survivor of the massacre, Leslie Benningfield Randall. So that's the lady that we saw in the beginning of this article, known as Mother Randall, who is 106, claimed that defendants participated in or allowed the destruction of their families' homes. The lawsuit also claims that the city, county, and state, as well as insurance companies, never compensated the victims for their homes. Just sick. It's disgusting. It's just I need a second. Cause this is just I don't understand the level of hate. I don't get it. The suit does not put a dollar amount on what needs to be repaid because in part the plaintiffs allege that the damages from the massacre continue and haven't fully been tallied. It calls for several other steps to be taken instead, a detailed accounting of the property and wealth lost or stolen as a result of the massacre, the buildings the building of a hospital in North Tulsa, the establishment of funds that would compensate the victims, the survivors and their descendants, and a 99-year break from the city and county taxes for survivors and the descendants of those who were killed or injured or had their property destroyed. If the suit succeeds, currently it is in motion to dismiss phase, and no court dates have been scheduled. It would confirm that the conditions of Black Tulsa today are directly linked to the past racial violence and the refusal to account for the violence toward the economic analysis uh, afterwards. I'm sorry. Refusal to account for the violence afterward. The economic analysis of the massacre enduring impact on Black Tulsans has generally been sparse, but research by Nathan Nunn, an economist at Harvard University, so far suggests that the massacre is directly responsible for reducing incomes by the average of 7.3%, what he terms a sizable effect. Nunn has found that the massacre is associated with declines in home ownership, occupational status, and educational attainment. The legal effort is highlighted. The legal effort is highlighting the massacre's enduring legacy of injury, or as the lawsuit puts it, public nuisance of racial disparities, economic inequalities, insecurity, and trauma that unlawful actions and omissions caused in 1921 and continue to cause 99 years after the massacre. This case is built on a claim of public nuisance, the same sort of argument that in 2019 persuaded a state district judge, Thad Blockman, to order Johnson and Johnson to pay the state $572 million, later reduced to $465 million, for contributing to the opioid epidemic through deceptive marketing painkillers. Some local experts, including Hannibal B. Johnson, an attorney who is regarded as the resident historian of Black Wall Street, has expressed significant doubt about the likelihood of a court judgment in favor of cash reparations. It's not going to be successful, Johnson told me. This this is just sickening. This is sickening. Um, Tulsa founded as Tulsi Town in part of an unusual family, the Perrymans, whose members included Creek Nation citizens and black and white people, was booming in 1921. The oil gushed attracted transplants from other parts of the surrounded states and states along the East Coast. It was difficult to find even standing room on the trains. One new survival, one new arrival, William Phillips, known as Chalk, wrote in an unpublished memoir, the city's population rose from 18,000 in 1910 to 140,000 by 1930. Phillips cataloged geologists, drillers, tool dressers, pipeliners, teamsters, robust, Bruce, I don't know what that is, or roughnecks, okay. And those workers in turn needed school teachers, storekeepers, and doctors. So let's back it up a little. Um, Tulsa, founded as Tulsi Town, and part of an unusual family, the Perrymans, whose members included Creek Nation citizens, black and white people. So this is the thing where I'm bringing that back up because in my book Forbidden, um, I talk about unity between um, Black Americans and Native Americans. And I hope I got the message across. I hope they got the message across that by us coming together and working together, what a difference it can make. There's also white allies, as I would say, um, that are a part of this. So it's not like it's impossible. They don't want us to unite. That's like their biggest fear. For us to come together and unite, and that would put an end to so many things so quickly. It really would if we just would unite and not just by not allowing them to do the manipulation tactics that they've been doing. I saw a video, a TikTok where someone was showing that a lot of Chinese immigrants were being brought into the U.S. and something that they do, a tactic that they do when they're starting to lose control and were starting to come together and things are starting to happen um, to cause more upset and more divide, they will use Asian people against Black people. So that's something that we need to be aware of. So they're bringing in all these Asian immigrants. Why? Because for them, they don't really know the history of this country. They know but whatever they're being told, and they're gonna do whatever they're being told because, to get whatever it is that they're offering them. So, this we grew up, and every ghetto had like a Chinese restaurant or or the hair supply stores, and I was like, why is it everybody's in our community making money but us, legally, I should say. And it's because it's intentional. That wasn't done by accident. They were told during their immigration process to build a business there so that they can, everything was set up for them to do that. One second. Um, yeah. So what I was saying was they do this. This is a tactic they pit us against. They pit us against each other. Uh, it is my honest, and actually it's if you start reading stuff, you start looking, you're seeing they infiltrated the Native American community. And same thing, I remember they used to have this calling me the like $5 Indians and it was like they paid like $5 to become Native American for white people. And this was a tactic. So that's why, so a lot of Native tribes infiltrated. They got into their office, got into their government and their politics and started changing stuff around. We need to start being more aware of the game and stop falling for it. You know, this thing that happened with affirmative action, and they're trying to say it was the Chinese people that wanted it or Asian students that wanted it. Yes, there are some because again, they don't know that affirmative action was really helping them. They had no clue because they don't know because they just for whatever reason they never really understood how it worked, right? Affirmative action really helped white women the most, but it wasn't really helping us that much anyway, but I'm not saying it didn't help at all, but it really, really, really helped white women. So, but now they're doing whatever they're doing to it, but they're trying to, if you pay attention, they're trying to pit black people against Asian people. So just pay attention. And we're not a monolith. Every single person has their own. So, like in my book, Forbidden, I have Molly's mother. She self-hates. She self-hates. She's a black woman and she hates herself pretty much. She would rather her daughter be with a white man that's beating her damn near to death every night than to be with a native man or a black man that loves her. Because that's self-hate. So it comes in all shapes and sizes, right? But we need to be more aware. I mean, this crap going on here in Tulsa, and this is still going on. Like they just shot it down, and the way they shot it down, I don't. It's frustrating. Like I get the same frustration with what happened with Shanquella, and it's just like they really don't care about us, and they never will until we start caring about ourselves and caring about each other. So I'm all for unity. I'm all for us coming together, the ones who are like-minded and really want to see change. This article, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. Um, I read up to page 7. I brutally assaulted your ears to page 7. And it's really good actually. Let me just see. Scott Ellsworth is a Tulsa native and a lecturer in Afro-American and African Studies at the University of Michigan. In his recent book about the massacre, the groundbreaking in an American city and its search for justice, we see that the black residents like Rebecca Brown Crutcher could have visited a library, a doctor's office, and a variety of food businesses, including 38 grocery stores, fruit stands, vegetable stands, and meat markets. She had she could have walked to and eaten at more than 2 dozen restaurants serving Ellsworth writes. Everything everything from sandwiches and plate lunches to a steak and chops with all the trimmings. There were two theaters, including the Dreamland, whose fictionalized reproduction would later appear in the television show Watchmen. And at least and at each of these spots she was likely to see black owners and operators. What a beautiful thing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? This is why I'm writing my second book. The follow-up for Forbidden is called Rosewood. I'm really going to dive into Rosewood. Um, I'd really like to dive into Tulsa too. Tulsa has a lot of history. And the thing with Rosewood, when they burnt down Rosewood, like they burnt down a lot of, like all the documentation, all the history that went with it. I remember I grew up in Florida and I remember being told that it wasn't just black people that were living in Rosewood, that it was black and natives again. And I really feel like if we it's hard to get the information, and of course they're burying it as much as they can. But I bet I wouldn't be surprised the fact that there's black natives and white people coming together in a community and thriving. That's what sets them off. They can't have us coming together. It scares the crap out of them. Because if we come together, we're going to realize there's more of us and less of them. So, I highly recommend downloading. This is free. I got it on Google Scholar, and you could just download it and read it, or read it on Google Scholar. You could skip to page 7 and read the rest. I don't want to attack you. See, I keep it. This is a really good article. A very, very good article. Just gonna look at some pictures. So this is after the bombing. That's sad. They bombed. Like, talk about overkill. For what? Because you're mad because black people are succeeding. They don't want us in their communities, and then they don't want us to have our own communities. Does that even make sense? I'm gonna skip through this because I'm not supposed to be looking at graveyards. Um, yeah, that was a graveyard. So, mm, Black Wall Street. It's just sad. It's like they don't want us to have anything. That's it. They just don't want us to have anything. Big ups to Caleb Gale, and the photographer. It's just, all right. I'm gonna go shut this down. But enjoy the rest of your day. Think about unity. Think about, let's pay attention to the narrative, and just let me know if you hear it, like the way that they try to pit us against each other. And I don't care for Democrats or Republicans. I don't care for either side. Like my professor in college says, it's the same bird. Both sides is whatever. Two wings attached to the same bird. You know what I mean? And it's just it's. I mean, because years ago, Republicans were the ones that were acting like what we think Democrats are supposed to be like, and Democrats were being like how we see Republicans today, and then they switched it on us. You can't tell me that's not intentional. I'm sorry. I don't trust anything they do, and it comes down to where I don't trust greedy people. It's just greed. They just greed is what we're really fighting. Well, we're fighting evil and wickedness, but yeah, greed is like their motivation. That's what motivates them to be evil and do wicked things. So I I'm gonna try to look for more things like this. If you haven't purchased Forbidden, and not because I wrote it, I really want everybody of like minds to read it and enjoy it. Like there's so many different messages in there. I don't want to talk about the messages. I want you guys to discover them on your own, because the beautiful thing about books is we could both sit down and read Forbidden, and I could walk away with a different message than you can. And then I could come back and read it again and come back with a different message. So it's whatever is going on in your life at the time is where you're going to pull that message out that's for you. And that's what I love about books and being a writer. And I really love writing with passion and putting my heart and soul into it, because you never know who it can help. But the only way I can do that is for more people to like, share, subscribe, re- you know, buy my books. It's on Amazon. It's called Forbidden by April Thomas. I'll leave a link. If you don't like to read, you can download my audio. I will tell you, I'm going to read my audio. It is AI read, but I he's a black man. With a British, he's a British accent. So, but he's really good. I really like how it comes out. Anyway, I'll leave both links in the description. I hope you have a beautiful day. Let's not let all this hate destroy our day, but just allow it to open up our minds and help us to think about what can we do to make things better.